Johnny Talk Sports in with the Week 2 college football predictions. Last week for Week 1, I went 4-1. The one game I missed was Southern Miss in South Alabama. I thought Southern Miss was going to be able to win that game based off of the struggles that South Alabama went through last year, but much improvement was shown on the field Thursday night for the South Alabama Jaguars. All 10 offensive possessions, not one single 3-and-out. That is exactly what you want to do if you want to win games. Extend drives, make the opposing defense tired, keep them on the field for as long as you can, and keep the offense off the field. Sometimes your best offense is also your best defense, and that is how South Alabama won that game. But other than that, got all the other 4 correct. So 4-1 on the season to begin the year, which is a really good start. So on to Week 2. And let me tell you, this is going to be ACC conference themed. In fact, all 5 of the matchups this week are all ACC matchups. Now, I originally had SMU and TCU as one of the games to predict for this week because I thought that was really going to be the best game of the week, but unfortunately it has been postponed due to COVID-19 being traced to within the universities. But 5 decent ACC matchups. I know that maybe they're not as exciting as what we were hoping for, but I do think once we get further along into the college football season, the better we're going to be excited for matchups. But let me just start off with the first one. We have a Thursday night game between UAB and the Miami Hurricanes. And I think this is going to be really a good matchup. I think UAB can keep this game close. We get to see our first look at D'Eriq King, the quarterback for Miami, the Houston transfer. But I think Miami will win this game, but I really want to see UAB keep it close. And I think they might be able to, because UAB has already had some experience with college football in 2020, which is kind of why Central Arkansas kept it close with UAB, only losing by 10 points. And I could see this happening as well, because this is the first time we're seeing D'Eriq King in this offense, and it's going to be a lot of growing pains. But I do think the Hurricanes will win this game. I am not anticipating a blowout. I anticipate this being probably a 10 to 13 point game. But I do like the Hurricanes. Next we have Syracuse and North Carolina. North Carolina number 18 in the country right now based off of the polls, but they're going to change after this week because the Big Ten and Pac-12 aren't playing this fall, at least for the moment, but that could change. We could see the Big Ten playing maybe late October or even Thanksgiving. But when I look at a team in the ACC conference that could possibly dethrone Clemson, I've mostly been hearing amongst the fans of college football and experts that the team that could possibly dethrone Clemson are Miami or Virginia Tech. I haven't really heard anybody really mention North Carolina. North Carolina is a really underrated football team. They may have went 6-6 in the regular season last year, but if you look at all 6 of their losses, they only lost by 1 possession. Just imagine how good North Carolina could have been if they were able to finish out games. And in those 6 losses, that included a 1-point loss to Clemson. And you can even really argue that if one thing went differently for the Tar Heels that day, North Carolina most likely wins that game. And I'm going to pick North Carolina over Syracuse in this matchup because I know North Carolina is very hungry to perform this season. I do think, kind of in a way, this not only shortened season, to say, but a conference-only schedule really benefited North Carolina here because they would have opened up the season against UCF. Then they would be playing Auburn this weekend. So I think North Carolina, this really benefits them. And I will say this. if North Carolina and Clemson face off in the ACC championship game, I think North Carolina has a really good chance to win that game. Sam Howell is a dark horse for the Heisman Trophy. The Tar Heels win. Next, we have Duke and number 10 Notre Dame. Notre Dame is being talked about as probably the only challenge for Clemson this season, and that's probably true. Ian Book is in the Heisman race. I'm going to pick the Irish in this one. I think with Ian Book being a fifth-year senior and his experience, his leadership is going to help Notre Dame not only in this game, but throughout the season. And Notre Dame does pose the only regular season challenge to the Clemson Tigers. So I'm going to pick Notre Dame to win this game. Maybe not convincingly, though, because a lot of the times in the early portions of the college football season, we see some teams, it looks a little rusty, it looks a little out of shape a little bit. But the further on the game, the first game of the season goes, and later on in the season, the better a team gets. And we could see this with Notre Dame. I think they win, but I don't really anticipate this being like a 52-7 victory. I think it's going to be one of those kind of average victories, probably maybe 34-17. I think maybe Duke gets an early touchdown in the game. But Notre Dame wins in the end. I think they dominate the second half of the game. Next, we have Georgia Tech and Florida State. Mike Norvell, first game as the Florida State head coach after moving on from Willie Taggart last season. And Georgia Tech, they are not the triple option team anymore. Their new coach has gotten rid of the triple option completely. But I'm going to pick the Florida State Seminoles in this matchup because I like Mike Norvell with Florida State. I think this is a decent fit. It may not turn into at least getting back to relevance this year, but it probably could with maybe 4, 5, 6 years from now. If they give Mike Norvell a chance, I think Florida State can get back to ACC championship contention. They could be a team that could eventually overthrow Clemson maybe 4, 5, 6 years from now if they are patient with Mike Norvell. But I think the Seminoles win big in this matchup. And our final game, this is where game day is going to go. Number 1 Clemson at Wake Forest. Now, with this matchup, if this was a normal matchup, and what I mean by normal is a sold-out crowd, this could be a very close game. And to be honest, maybe it still could. Maybe Clemson, even though Clemson has shown in the past they can be really efficient, there could still be some growing pains. And we kind of saw some last year in the opener against Georgia Tech. Trevor Lawrence threw 2 interceptions. He didn't play much better against Texas A&M the next week. It took Trevor Lawrence and this Clemson offense a few games to get into rhythm. And if you're Wake Forest, you have nothing to lose. You've got the number 1 team in the country in prime time. Everybody's going to be watching. You have nothing to lose. You have all to gain. What a better way to begin your season with the number 1 team in the country. But unfortunately, Clemson, even if they turn the ball over early in matchups, I believe that they will end up dominating the second half. So I'm going to take Clemson to win this matchup. I'm going to say 42-13. I think maybe Wake Forest, kind of like what I think Duke might do against Notre Dame, maybe get an early touchdown, maybe get some early momentum, but then Clemson eventually figures it out because it's very tough to beat Clemson. It's very tough to beat the championship teams because when you're playing a championship team, you got to take some risks. And maybe a risk that Wake Forest can do is maybe fake the punt on like their first punt. Just do a fake punt. Maybe try a trick play to get momentum, kind of get your sideline hyped up. And especially without any fans in attendance, that's going to be an issue as well. In fact, the thing I'm interested in for college football in general this season is how are home teams going to adapt to no fans in the stands? it could be very possible that we could see a lot of road teams win this season. Maybe we could see Clemson lose a home game because maybe they don't have fans. I'm not really sure if Clemson will have fans this season, but you just got to think about which teams maybe will have limited fan attendance and which teams won't have fan attendance whatsoever. But either way, I will take Clemson to win that matchup. So those are my picks for the week. For review, I have Miami over UAB, North Carolina over Syracuse, Notre Dame over Duke, Florida State over Georgia Tech, and Clemson over Wake Forest. Kind of like last week, going with all 5 favorites, which early in the season it's kind of normal to do that because we don't really have much to go off of yet. In fact, it probably takes about maybe 3 or 4 weeks so you can finally use what we've seen in the previous game. So like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you next time.